Hello everyone. I'm Maria Vera will be presenting on the Babesia species, and this is a blood parasite. So the overview for today's presentation is firstly we'll be off with an introduction in which we'll get to know more about the species, their classification, epidemiology, and their transmission mode. We'll also move on to their pathophysiology and clinical manifestations, their life cycle, their laboratory diagnosis, treatments, and preventive measures, and lastly, our conclusion. So the Babesia species, it belongs to the phylum of Ampicomplexan parasites, and it is a blood parasite that infects the blood cells of vertebrates, specifically the red blood cells. So the common Babesia species that causes infections in humans are the Babesia migrati, Babesia divergens, and the Babesia duncani. There are other species, Babesia species, that causes infections in vertebrates, such that of Babesia bovis, which causes infection in cattle, and Babesia rosai, which causes infections in dogs. The blue diagram shown in the presentation is the list of classification in which the Babesia species come under. The epidemiology of this species is that of Babesia microti is mainly found in the northeastern and midwestern of the United States. We have Babesia divergent, which is commonly found in Europe, and Babesia crassi and Babesia ventorum, which is commonly found in the northwestern China. The transmission mode of these species, they are mainly transmitted by black-legged ticks, and it causes an infection known as babesiosis. This condition is a serious blood condition in which mainly mistake it for a common flu due to the onset symptoms being similar, and it is transmitted by an infected animal such as a rodent or even your pets, cats and dogs, when it has been infected by a tick. Thus, when it bites you, or even if in an exchange of saliva, once they lick an open wound, this parasite is able to enter the human host. It is found to be rarely transmitted through blood transfusion, specifically red blood cell transfusion, organ transplant, or even mother to fetus, since the parasite is present in the blood. So, moving on to our second objective of the day, which is the pathophysiology. This begins when an infected tick has bitten a human being. The parasite, the Babesia parasite within the tick, enters into the human host and moves into the blood vessels. For this to successfully occur, the tick must be attached onto the human skin for 24 to 36 hours or more. This allows time for the parasite to fully penetrate the host skin and enter the blood vessels. Once within the blood vessels, only then can the parasite reproduce or destroy the red blood. Reproduce and destroy the red blood cells. The immune response against this parasitic infection is not if it is not effective, since it's difficult to kill the parasite, since it has the ability to alter the surface proteins of the cells, and since it also resides within the red blood cell, it disallows the immune cells from recognizing it, thus killing it. So, some of the clinical manifestations of this parasitic infection is that they experience high fever, sweats and fatigue, chills, or even coughs. These symptoms are that of similar to a common flu. The severity of the disease is greatly met with patients who are immunocompromised, such as health conditions due to health conditions such as AIDS, HIV, or due to their age, the young and the elderly. In extreme or severe conditions, the patient may experience cases such as hemolytic anemia, since the red blood cells continuously becomes damaged by these parasites, and it could also cause a necrosis to begin, since there is a low supply of oxygen to the tissues, which induces necrosis. Secondly, we have jaundice, and jaundice is the condition in which there is a buildup of bilirubin in the bloodstream, and bilirubin, as we know, it is the end result of the breakdown of red blood cells. So the third condition is the inflammatory response. So when red blood cells are lysed, the presence of the free hemoglobin and the cellular debris in the bloodstream triggers an inflammatory response. And in extreme conditions, this could lead to unnecessary inflammatory response, which can cause tissue to become damaged. And lastly, the other condition would be splenomegaly. This is a term used for the enlargement of the spleen, and this is caused by when the spleen has been overworked, and since there's many red blood cells being damaged, it is all taken to the spleen to be removed and filtered. Thus, it enlarges the spleen. So next objective is the life cycle of this Babesia species. So the tick ingests the Babesia species, and it is detectable within 10 hours of ingestion. The gametocytes begin to develop new arrowhead-shaped organelles, and this helps in the gamete fusion. So once the zygote is formed, it can then penetrate the epithelial cells of the tick guts and then travel to the tick salivary gland. Once it's in the salivary gland, it becomes sporocytes. These sporocytes then develop into co- continuously develops within the salivary glands to form sporocytes. The sporocyte specialized organelles. Once it is fully developed into sporocyte organelles, then it is transmitted by the tick during a blood meal. So when the tick has attached itself onto the human host or vertebrate host, then it is transmitted during a blood meal, as the sporocytes are then introduced into the host. Once it has entered the host, it undergoes asexual budding, asexual reproduction, which is budding. It becomes trophozoites, and then it becomes merozoites, and then gametocytes are formed. Then once in the gametocytes, then it then differentiates into male and female gametes. Everything that I've mentioned in the previous slide is summarized in this slide in 7 steps. The laboratory diagnosis is our next objective, and it is important that we first know the medical history of our patients. This is to allow us to know how severe the babesiosis condition will be or can be. And the next laboratory diagnosis, is molecular testing. We do molecular testing by using the polymerase chain reaction assay, and this allows the identification of these parasites simply by taking a bit of blood and performing the test. Lastly, the other laboratory diagnosis is that we perform microscopic analysis. This is done through the preparation of blood smears, and it is used to screen for Babesia species. So the structures of the parasite that indicates the presence of it is shown in the diagram, in which A is the Maltese cross and B is the ring form. So the presence of any of these two structures indicates the presence of the parasite in the blood cell. It is important that there are multiple blood smears prepared, and it is carefully examined so that it won't be confused with other parasitic infections such as malaria. The treatment given to those suffering from the parasitic infection babesiosis is that of medications and procedures. This list of medications help slow down the immune reaction to the parasite so that there would be unnecessary tissue damage, and it also helps slow the progression of anemia and jaundice. Moving on to the procedures. These procedures are highly recommended to those who experience severe and extreme reactions towards the parasite. This is firstly, we have blood transfusion, particularly the red blood cell transfusion to aid in anemia. And exchange transfusion is also for aiding of anemia or low blood pressure. And mechanical ventilation, since the lungs begin to fail during babesiosis, and the mechanical ventilation allows them to breathe. And also dialysis, it helps with the exchange and cleaning of the fluid since the kidneys begin to fail to during babesiosis. So these are some of the preventive measures. We have using tick repellents to avoid the attachment of the ticks, wearing clothing to cover skin when places prone to ticks. So usually when you're playing with your pets, and also to conduct regular tick checks after potential exposure. This is very important since I've mentioned before that the ticks need to be specifically attached to your skin for 24 to 36 hours or even more. So if you're able to find the tick before that period of time, you're able to prevent the tick from transmitting the parasite. And also to manage tick population in the environment and to check pets thoroughly for ticks. As I've mentioned before, the ticks can also be found on your pets. And lastly, our conclusion for the day. So, babesiosis is a significant zoonotic disease, and it is with implications to both public health and the livestock industry. And it is important to understand the biology and transmission and control of these Babesia species for managing and preventing the infection. So these are my references. There's about 8 references, and some of them really contain really good articles about this particular species. So you can always refer to them if you want to know more about this species. Thank you so much for your time and have a blessed and safe holidays.